Morning, everyone. I hope we're all feeling sparkly today, but if you're not, the good news is you are in a cinema. And the better news is that cinema is good for you, and that is a fact. And today we're going to hear from two sides of health and well-being, and we're going to have some cold, hard facts and explore ways in which we can articulate these things. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Claire Horrocks, and I care for all things cinema at Exeter Phoenix. And this morning's session was inspired by a recent initiative to stir up a small but determined group of individuals who are experiencing severe loneliness in my city in Exeter. So these people were film literate, but they were nervous about attending cultural spaces alone, or they were unsure about navigating a programme after a significant change in their circumstance for the first time. And kind of witnessing this small group grow in size and confidence got me thinking about cinema and its role in this development. And at this time, I was also privileged to visit a custom-built cinema in St Guy's, was it St Guy's Hospital, which is managed by these guys here at MediCinema. And I think it's fair to acknowledge that most of us know that the spaces we occupy and encourage others to attend have the power to improve our mind and our body and our spirit. We're seeing that. But today we are going to hear from two incredible initiatives that demonstrate how switching off and stepping away and leaving the world outside can impact us all, both physically and mentally. And just quickly, before I hand over to our amazing speakers, I just wanted to kind of briefly highlight what actually happens to our bodies when we go to the cinema. And I think it's also important to register that there is a lot of research in the impact of visual art, music, and even kind of theatre, is that right? But there's very little about cinema and film exhibition. So kind of my motivation here is to kind of draw our attention to the potential to kind of evaluate and articulate what's going on, so we as exhibitors can maybe think about what we're doing. And it might inspire us to look at new ways of funding what we're doing, because it might be that there are other pots that are relevant to this. And it might kind of shift our understanding to shift a better understanding of what we're doing for our audiences, and particularly in a time when we're seeing more people isolated, lonely, and kind of poor health is becoming more prominent. So quickly to this kind of research. So there has been a bit of research, and a few years ago, View Cinema commissioned research by a cognitive neuroscientist at UCL called Joe Devlin. And he carried out some experiments to measure exactly how people respond to watching films in groups in the big screen versus alone on a laptop or a small screen. And in this study, 51 people were brought into a cinema, and the poor sods had to watch the 2019 film Aladdin. But in the same period, a small group of people were also brought in to a lab-controlled setting where they watched the film alone on a laptop. So all audiences in both kind of settings were asked to wear like a biometric sensor, a bit like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, and it measured their heart rate and their electrodermal activity, which is like the strongest indicator of emotional engagement, and it also measured their body temperature. And what the experiment showed was that those watching the film together experienced a significantly stronger response. So that kind of makes sense. But things like the audience's heartbeats began to sync, and those heartbeats began to match the narrative of the film. So the study saw that there were spikes in electrodermal activity in our heart rate, and they were rising and falling at points of the film where emotional things were taking place. For example, like when Jasmine and Aladdin kissed for the first time, everybody's heart rate went up. Suckers. So further to this, the experiment also showed that even though people were sitting still, their heart rates were kind of going up, and they kind of reached a healthy heart rate, which is like the equivalent of doing like 40 minutes of gentle exercise. So you guys, you're killing it. It's great. Scrap the gym. But then another study, which kind of looked into more like the health benefits for our minds, found that there are long-term brain benefits in that our long-term memory, our ability to focus, being more productive, our moods can be elevated, our perspectives can be changed. That's something we all know about in this room, but also our bodies can be energized. So we're seeing that this formula of going into a space, having no distractions, kind of leaving the house, new location, new space, supplemented by our opportunity to hear new stories, it's kind of helping us to make new memories. And if you think about how we experienced brain fog in kind of COVID times, when you're not seeing anything new and you just can't remember, everything's a blur, but versus our ability to kind of focus our memory. we also have more empathy and compassion, and there's evidence that you kind of come out of the cinema kind of having more love for the people that were in the cinema with you, even though they're strangers, even the noisy ones. So it's pretty powerful stuff, the cinema, and it's quite amazing, but I think we need to know much more about it, and we're not going to take my word for it, because, you know, we've got some experts in the room. So I'm going to hand over to these speakers who are kind of delivering and living the stuff on a regular basis. And first up, we're going to hear from Beth and Paul from MediCinema, who are an incredible charity that positions kind of custom-built cinemas into hospitals and medical spaces, where patients can access kind of the latest films while receiving treatment and medical care. And we're also going to welcome writer and journalist Tash from Sheffield-based film club Girls Galore, who is inspired by a want to tackle loneliness among young female film fans who now host events in her local cinema Sheffield showroom. So can you please kind of join me in welcoming Beth and Paul to share their experiences? Over to you guys.
Thank you. Just to lead on from what you were saying, Claire, quite a lot of the research and the literature out there about arts and health, we've found that it kind of paints cinema as passive, like a passive form of entertainment. But as you spoke to, and as we know that a cinema experience and going to watch a film is an active one, and it has huge impact on people's health and well-being. It's why we do what we do, and it's what we've seen firsthand for the 25 years that we've been running. So yes, we're MediCinema, and we're a charity, as Claire said. We build and run state-of-the-art cinemas in hospitals and places of care across the UK. And our mission is to improve the emotional health, physical health, mental health of patients, their loved ones, their carers, all through the power of the shared cinema experience and the magic of film. So we thought we would start with a little film, just to give you a flavour of what we do, so you can see a little bit of what a screening looks like, and then we can talk a bit to the benefits that we've seen that our service can bring. They've trusted me with the clicker, so just good luck to us all.
We're a cinema in a hospital, and in many ways we're just like any other cinema. We're like any chain cinema. It's a proper cinema, but we've got space at the back for patients in wheelchairs, and then we've got a big space for patients in their beds as well.
We screen for inpatients, outpatients, staff, and basically provide a therapeutic experience using film as a way to do that.
I was having very intensive chemotherapy, just couldn't see an end to it. Everything just felt very dark. You have to surrender everything in order to have a future. Coming down to see a film was like a lifeline, something to look forward to. For me, it was a way of being able to put myself into the character's shoes, remove myself from where I was in life.
MediCinema absolutely is an integral part of this hospital, that it's a part of how we do things. I've seen the difference it makes to be able to go and do something that all the rest of us take for granted, which is to go and watch a film. It's a transformational experience, it really is.
It changes the way you perceive things and trying to think more positively about situations so you can get through this and you're not alone.
As I go around the wards and I see people who are finding it difficult to engage with their treatment plan, but actually giving them the opportunity to go to MediCinema, you can see those behaviours changing and their engagement changing. So it's invaluable.
MediCinema is incredibly sensitive and careful about infection prevention control issues and the interface with the clinical care that patients are undergoing.
We've got a full resus trolley. We've got 2 nurses on duty looking after all the patients.
And once you've created this facility, it can be used for lots of different things. With our cancer services, we have a lot of different patient support groups, and so we've been able to set up screenings for those groups. I would never want to change this space now we've got it. It's absolutely fantastic.
MediCinema provides emotional, mental healing that is actually really difficult to do in a hospital. Once you've seen it, and once you've seen the impact it has on patients and their friends and family, you would never go back.
Thanks, Beth. I suppose just to sort of lead on from that, to talk about our audience specifically, sort of put it into context, on top of the medical reason that someone's in hospital, which is obviously difficult enough, whatever people are going through, there are just so many other challenges and difficulties that come on top. So people feel isolated, they're scared, you're sort of taken away from your normal life. Like you're living your life, you might get a diagnosis and you're literally taken out of your normal life, put in, you can be away from your friends and family. Some of our cinemas, some of the hospitals we work with are, like the one in Glasgow, basically serves the whole west coast of Scotland. So there can be people from the islands, so they're nowhere near and they can't have any visitors. You're basically taken away sometimes from your normal support structures that you rely on. And on top of that, you can experience a loss of control. And I think that's why we do it. So in that video, you would have seen Simon, one of our cinema managers, on the ward speaking to people. And our cinema managers are going round the ward all afternoon, telling people about MediCinema and giving them some choice. And when you're stuck in a hospital bed, getting poked and prodded and given your medication and told what to do, to have a conversation with someone about film, to have someone give you a choice, even if you decide not to come, it's so important. And on top of that, there can often be, if someone's in for a long time, there really is a bit of a loss of identity and people lose who they are. And I think, as Beth said, our aim, it's really just to support people when they're going through all those things. And I think one of the things I love most about, I mean, I love lots of things about MediCinema, but one of the things I love most is we help the whole spectrum of society. So, I mean, it's from 2 to 102. Is we often get children's first cinema experiences. You go to the children's wards, and it's quite a common thing where people say, I don't think they'll sit through a film. They've never been to a cinema before, but we'll give it a go to get off the ward. And they're amazed that they might only be able to watch 15 minutes of something on a tablet, but when they actually come in the cinema and they see the size of the screen and the lights go down, and they sit and watch the whole hour and a half of the film. From that to the other end of the spectrum of people who say, I haven't been to the cinema in decades. I'm not joking, last week, or 2 weeks ago actually, I was at Chelsea in Westminster at one of our screenings running it, and there was a chap, and I literally made a joke to him. We brought him in, he came in his bed, and I made a joke to him, and I went, I bet this is the first time you've ever been to the cinema in your bed. And he turned around to me and he went, it's the first time I've been to the cinema in 35 years. It was Deadpool and Wolverine, so it was quite a welcome back to the cinema. But that's the sort of thing it's amazing. And then it can also be people who are in hospital for a few days. Maybe they've got just in for some elective surgery. They come the night before to take their mind off having surgery the next day. Right to the other end of the spectrum, it can be people who spend their whole lives in hospital. Oscar on the screen there, he is thankfully now at home, but he's back in regularly. But at this point in that photo, he has spent the whole first 5 years of his life in hospital, not being able to have the care package to actually be home. So the hospital was his life, and he came to the MediCinema twice a week. And I think on top of that, it's also sort of we support people with end-of-life care. So if someone's not on a journey of recovery, we're sort of here to ensure that we can enrich the quality of time and the quality of life that they have left. But yeah, I think going on to the sort of impact thing, because we help so many people in so many different ways, it actually brings us, I should say it brings Beth, real challenges in terms of, well, how do you measure that if you're helping so many people in different ways? And I think, the next slide. So Beth, the amazing Beth, has done such a good job, and she's worked incredibly hard to look at all the feedback we've had from our patients and sort of collated things, distilled things, to sort of try and bring it down to key specific themes. So anything from, as we said, supporting mental health and resilience, just reducing people's stress, escapism and respite. So that could be physical escape, as a physical escape from a claustrophobic ward, get away from a couple of hours to somewhere where there's aircon. Hospital wards are very warm. Or it can be a mental escape for a few hours as well. Nick's our cinema manager at Guy's. She always says we build the cinemas so they are exactly like a normal cinema. which is it's not just about the physical space, it's about the mental space that you go to. And we had a mum who described it as a brain break. Yeah, and then to things like creating connections. So that can be speaking to someone just about something that isn't your illness. It can sometimes be the only time that day that they've spoken to someone about something that isn't medical. And film's a real leveler. Everyone's got an opinion. So it's so lovely when you're having conversations with people about film. Or it could be connections. It could be a date night. Reconnecting with your loved one, but not on a hospital ward by the side of your bed, actually having a normal experience.
So I guess, how do we know that we help in these ways? We talk to the people that use our service and we listen to them. And one way that we do that is through surveys, which we give out twice a year. And patients and their loved ones and hospital staff attending will fill those out, and we get insights like these, which this is like talking my language, love a spreadsheet and a graph. It kind of highlights, this question set really highlights for us the physiological, psychosocial, psychological benefits that our service can bring. We've had people say that attending MediCinema 55% of people said that attending MediCinema helps to reduce pain. 94% it helps to reduce isolation. Some really big, bold statements there with really high results. It's incredible. We've also found in our surveys that it's kind of highlighted for us that it's not just about the film. Like, yes, it plays a huge part, but we've learned that it's about the anticipation and the excitement and something to look forward to. It's about the experience itself and all that that brings. And then it's about the lasting effects. It's the memories created, the confidence gained. It's even the hope that you might take away from that screening. I love the stat that 81% of attendees said that MediCinema made them feel hopeful, which is incredible. But to that point about the lasting effects, like obviously really, really interesting to us. And one stat that we wanted to pull out for you today was that 72% of attendees said that after going to MediCinema, they were more likely to go to a public cinema, which, yeah, it's incredible because it suggests not only that MediCinema can help increase engagement with cinema more generally, but also that kind of insight has huge impact for our work. Has huge potential for our work in that impact can last way beyond a time that someone spent in hospital. Like it can last way beyond even just one screening. We also give all of our attendees the chance to give us feedback at every screening. So we hand out these sort of feedback thank you cards. And the question we ask is about what MediCinema meant to them. And it's a really simple question, but we get insights like these. The top three there, they are from our regular inpatient screenings that we have every week. And inpatients and relatives of inpatients, they tell us that we gave them time, like as to what you said, Paul, we gave them time to not think about what they're going through, or quality time with their loved ones. A lot of comments we see coming through are about how we help support their recovery and how it kind of highlights that the healing process is way beyond the biomedical, and that we are part of that holistic healing process for a person, or can be. And then the last comment on there I just wanted to dig into today, because it's from a lady who came to one of our tailored screenings. And tailored screenings for us, alongside our regular screenings, they are a service we've started where we're working with outpatient groups and outpatient communities, where we curate an event around a film screening. So, but it has like an additional element to it. So you'd come along and watch the film, but then perhaps there's an educational or therapeutic element afterwards that's led by the clinical partner. Or perhaps the additional element is just the social side of things. Like, you can get together with people who are going through the same thing as you. And that's exactly what this lady came along to. She's part of the breast cancer support group tailored screening that we do every month at one of our sites. And they can just watch a film, and then all these women just gather and chat about what they're going through. And I went along to one, and they were sort of giving each other tips about maybe symptoms that might come up for each other. And I think just connecting with people that are on the same journey. And this lady, I mean, she said, "I do not feel alone anymore." I mean, you can't get more powerful than that. We also speak directly with patients and families and staff on the ground, and do in-depth interviews, because obviously they know best the benefits that our service brings. So we just thought we'd end on a couple of those case studies and take you through those. So first up, this is Jake. He's 3 in this picture, and he came to see Peter Rabbit 2 a few years ago, as you can guess from the ears. And we invited him to the cinema screening on a week that was just a roller coaster week for his mum and his dad. They'd just found out that Jake had leukemia, and they described to me watching Jake like playing with his cars on the hospital floor, and feeling just completely terrified about the road ahead, and that Jake, obviously, because he was 3, just had no comprehension of what was to come for him. So they said that being invited to the screening couldn't have been more perfect timing. They said it was like a tonic, and that it was relief and normality for them at a time when they were just absolutely terrified. And for Jake, it was an adventure. It was his first ever cinema experience. So it was the unexpected and just really fun at a time when he could have a bit of a break from the machines and the wards and not really knowing what was going on. He got to have just like this lovely adventure and pure escapism. And since then, Jake's doing really well. He is 6 now, and last week he had his last hospital chemo session. And his mum, we keep in touch, and his mum tells me that just having positive experiences sort of dotted throughout, like having the MediCinema screenings to look back on, just mean that Jake has so many amazing positive memories of his healthcare experience. And a story that I love is that it was his turn to do show and tell at school, and he chose to talk about MediCinema. And some of the other kids were really jealous, and he was like this little superstar, and he came home like beaming. And I think if we can help like a little boy feel proud about the time that he spent in hospital, rather than feeling nervous or anxious about it, I guess, that has like huge ramifications for the future. Like if he ever has to, I mean, hopefully not, but if he ever has to go back to hospital again, or any of his loved ones do, we've helped shape a positive perception of the hospital for him and his whole family. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have David, who was a real character. He came to hospital to have some surgery on his face. He had a tumour on his face. And he described to me the isolation he felt lying in his hospital bed the day before his surgery. He and his family lived so far away from the hospital that his family couldn't be there. And he said, "I just felt very alone." And he talked a lot in general about hospital and how you kind of just have to put your trust in all these people around you, like the nurses and the doctors and the anesthesiologists, and just muster up some kind of hope that things will be okay. In his words, he said, "I'm a grown man, but I felt so vulnerable." And it was a very humbling experience to lose all that control. And one thing he said that will always stay with me, he said, inside every bloke like me at a time like this, there's just this little boy saying, like, what's going on? And he said he hadn't felt like that in a really long time. And then he went along to a screening, and he said as soon as the lights went down and the film turned on, his anxieties just washed away. He said that not only did it give him a chance to have a brain break from his worries about the upcoming surgery, but on the ward, he's there looking at other men who are having similar surgeries or have had it, who are in pain. Like, that's a really tough thing mentally to have to look at even. So just having the physical time away from that, he said it meant he could come back feeling uplifted. And he said that the film itself had a really happy ending. So to speak to the hope thing I mentioned earlier, like, he said that he felt like after seeing that happy ending, he's like, things are going to work out for me too. Like, it gave him this renewed sense of hope. And things did work out for him. I included that picture because I just thought it was so lovely, just like pure joy. He like loves sailing, and he was back out on the water. But yeah, that's David.
Thank you. Stop making me cry. I actually, just a slight thing on that. I just want to say, how privileged we feel that people share these stories with us. I think when they're going through the most difficult time, they give up their time to speak to us. And I think it just really shows how much it means to them that they actually, with everything they're going through, they sit and give these interviews. And I think those are 2 stories. So this year, we've given almost 12,000 cinema experiences. And like, every single one of those 12,000 will have their own story about what MediCinema meant to them, what impact it had on them. So anyway, with that in mind, I'm going to finish on a case study of just an amazing woman called Yasmin, who we welcomed into the MediCinema when she was near the end of her life. I'm going to read her words and try not to cry, because she was a writer and she wrote this, and she says it so much better than I could. So, the MediCinema has been a beacon for me during the roughest storm of my life. When you're a culture vulture like me and discover your life has been stolen from you through no fault of your own, it's harrowing, shocking. Then on top of that, the things you could do to comfort yourself, like go to the movies, become a minefield. Navigating stairs, public transport, rough and ready Joe Public, when what you need is oxygen, a wheelchair, and gentleness. It's intimidating. I arrived at the hospital depressed and very down. I was amazed when the palliative care team told me about MediCinema. I'd not been to the cinema in 6 months, very rough going for a weekly meerkat movie girl. It was like being thrown a lifeline. I was me again, and you have no idea how precious that is when you only have months to live, to be yourself. She says, my cancer has been so hard on those who care about me, but when I get taken to the MediCinema, shown to my seat, made cosy, I'm not Yasmin with terminal lung cancer, I'm just me again. And I blossom, and I'm excited, and for a few hours, we can just be friends and family enjoying a movie again. My brothers and my friends by my side, exchanging anecdotes, laughing, it's meant everything to me.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Honestly remarkable, and I think just your personal aspect and relationship with all these individuals that are coming and taking advantage of the space is just remarkable. So we're going to let you guys recover from your stories, and we're going to look at a flip side, and no pressure to follow that. But we're going to hear about some amazing initiatives that Tash is doing in Sheffield, and we're going to hear about all the amazing film club activity that Tash has been up to. Over to you.
Hi, is this on? Yeah, so I'm 27, and as I'm guiding through my 20s, I find loneliness very hard. Making friends is really hard because you don't have your friends from school anymore. Everyone goes to college, and then you go to uni, and everyone's just here, there, everywhere, and it gets a bit lonely. And I kind of went to the cinema as a form of therapy for myself to get away from any kind of anxiety, loneliness, whatever you call it, growing up, which I kind of hate. As I get to 30, I'm like, R.I.P. my youth. But then, like, towards the end of last year, despite me really liking going to the cinema by myself, I would kind of look to the seat next to me and think, like, damn, I would kind of like wish someone was here with me tonight, just on a night after work or anything like that, just to kind of talk about the film, talk about how your day was, things like that. And then I would kind of go home and think, okay, I'm back at my flat by myself again. So one day before work, I start work at like 7:45. I just tweeted, what if I like did a film club for like females in Sheffield? Like, not really thinking anyone would reply. But the response within like 15 minutes was like, yes, do it. And then I had Ryan from Showroom literally email me, be like, I've been thinking about a film club, so why don't we kind of like join forces? And I was like, okay. Because I have worked with Showroom previously because I was a BFI young programmer. So I kind of had connections with the Showroom anyway, and I freelance as a film journalist. So being in the cinema for me is kind of like a normal thing. I go like 2-3 times a week. And so, yeah, we got the ball rolling quite quickly. I didn't really know to start with kind of what it would look like, but I knew from the offset that I didn't want it to be like a book club. I didn't want it to be like anything too serious, like, or really in-depth, because I wanted it to be, I know from suffering from anxiety that it can be quite stressful to talk to new people. It can be quite daunting, and then you kind of isolate yourself. And just like right now, my heart rate's like really, really high. So I wanted it to be like, the people that come to this film club, they can sit by themselves. They can come and sit with us, do whatever makes you feel comfortable. And then Showroom, shout out to Izzy at Showroom for booking a table just in the cafe area where, you know, it's amongst everyone else. As you can see, this was a screening from a couple of weeks ago where I screened Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging as part of a Sheffield Film Festival, because what young girl doesn't like nostalgic sleepover films? And afterwards, I thought, what about a friendship bracelet making class? Because recently I've been going to Taylor Swift concerts and kind of got in the habit of making them. And it made for the most therapeutic kind of talk after the film. Like, there were no pressure for everyone just staring at one another, being like, okay, this is slightly awkward. Hi. Everyone was just, you know, with the beads, everyone was just chatting about the film, what kind of nostalgic films they like. For example, myself, I love Twilight. And yeah, the top one was from our first screening. And before the screening, the film was a portrait of a lady on fire. I remember sitting there thinking, will anyone actually come? And it was daunting because I was like, if no one comes, then I'm never going to make friends. But the people came, everyone, I guess the side effects were kind of like everyone is in the same boat, and often at times our anxiety kind of makes us feel like our own enemy and makes us self-doubt. And everyone's just the same in that kind of aspect, that we all feel the loneliness as we get older, but everyone loves film. And I think to have that safe space of there being no pressure, just come, relax, we'll make friends, chat about, it don't even have to be about film. We've chat about some people going back to uni in Sheffield, like talk about like the stresses of work, and just general like live chit chat. So yeah.
Are we still on? Can you hear us still?
I
Or
think
is that one as well? Yeah. Oh, okay. Cool. It's amazing, and it's great to hear how you've just taken a personal initiative to go out there and think, what can I do about this? But like on a grand scale, it's not just, oh, I'm gonna go and meet someone in the pub. Like, no, I'm gonna put a film club together. Yeah. I'm gonna do this. I'm intrigued to see how it's grown over the time. And how you've gone about telling people what films, what kind of methods are you sticking with Twitter, or are you expanding on that?
It's very like casual. Like, so every month I'll just pick a film from the Showrooms program, because I didn't want it to be like the films got chosen for me, because that, like we were talking about earlier, it wouldn't really feel authentic, because I hate that perception of like girls only liking certain kind of films. So like, for example, one of the screenings I did was Doom Part 2, because girls like action films. So I just kind of wanted to do like films that are a bit different each month, and I just do an Instagram post every month, try and make it a bit fun, like add my kind of opinions to it, and just kind of see if people come. I try and do screenings like on a Sunday where it's a bit more relaxed, Friday after work kind of thing, kind of mix it up a bit. Like, I think with how Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging went down with the friendship bracelet making class after, I think that's also a good approach to kind of do like a little activity. But one time I only had 2 people come, and I was like, okay. But then in my back of my head, that's not a bad thing because 2 people showed up. Like, we're not always going to get like the same kind of attendance, and that's still a positive. Even if 1 person came, I'd be like, great.
Yeah, and think of the benefits that those 1 or 2 people are still having. That's still relevant. And we talk about this as exhibitors all the time, about the importance of putting a film on. Even if you only get 7 people, those 7 people have had an experience with you in your space or in your company, and that's massive. Quickly, before we hear a bit more from Beth, and then we open up to some questions, you touched upon it with programme, but I'm intrigued to see how you guys all approach the programme and how much are the films you're choosing relevant to what's happening in the room and your audience. And I know it's really different for both of you and then other people here, but I'm intrigued to hear from you guys about how you programme. And also, it'd be good to hear, because you're doing stuff with Art of Action, it'd be really good to hear about your future plans with your programme. So yeah, do you want to start with you guys?
Yeah, I think very similar to you, Tash. Like, we don't want to make any assumptions. We don't want to patronise people. With our programme, and we do it all a month ahead for all of our sites, and we just want to get as broad range as possible of the new releases, basically. And we really have found you can't make assumptions. Like, I remember wheeling down a patient in her bed who must have been like over 80 to see London Has Fallen. And I was like, are you sure this one's for you? And taking her back to the ward, she was like, that was the best thing I've ever seen. You really can't. So I think we also just want to be able to, again, to your point about choice, like offer choice. If someone says, oh, do you know what, June Part 2, that's not really for me, we can say, well, tomorrow we're showing this rom-com. Do you fancy that instead? So there's always a conversation. I mean, we tend to steer away from the hardcore horror or anything that's really, really claustrophobic. But apart from that, we just try and show as much as we can, really.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, it's just about not patronising people, which actually sadly can happen in hospitals quite a lot. You become a bed number and you're not a person. So it's just about giving people an informed choice about what we're showing. We do on medical films. We do kind of avoid if something's got overly medical things in it, because really people are coming to the MediCinema to escape from that, unless it's maybe one of the tailored screenings and actually there's a really important like a documentary about something. Oh, what was that one called? Unrest, the documentary maybe about 5 years ago about like chronic fatigue syndrome and things like that. So like we actually did a special screening for that. We worked with the department of the department in the Royal Victoria Infirmary in Newcastle about that, and it was fascinating. We had family members turn around and say to us, she was like, my sister has had this for 10 years and I had no real understanding of what she was going through until I watched that documentary. So we do show medical things sometimes in that context, but in our general screenings, no.
And also, just to say as well, like new releases are such an important part of what we do, because for someone to get a call, if they're stuck in hospital and they get a call from their mate, like, how are you? What have you been up to? And for them to be able to say, yeah, I went to the cinema and watched Deadpool. Like, it's kind of like this social currency. Like, it's a connection to the outside world. Like, the world carries on and you might feel stuck, but you can get involved and you can be part of it too, just because you've had this really poor luck and you're unwell. So that's really important as well. I think a lot of people think that we just show like Singing in the Rain over and over again, but that's not the case. Like, distributors are so kind and donate all the new releases to us for release day. So it's really a special thing to be able to offer to patients.
It's like that thing for like a teenager to have that social currency that they're able to tell their friends that they're watching it. I love it when you maybe get an older person and they maybe come the second time and they've been on the phone to the like maybe their son or daughter and have said like, oh, I went to see Beetlejuice last night, and their child and their son or that is just like, yeah, right, oh God, and start worrying that they've got dementia or something. But you're like, no, there is really a cinema in the hospital.
And how about you, Tash? Can you talk a bit about your programme and your plans moving forward?
Yeah, so I think a part of the audience at the film club, like the Angus Thongs Perfect Snogging screening went down really well, because I find that, especially young girls, we like nostalgia films, because, I mean, I'm just speaking for myself, I find nostalgic films very easy to watch for anxiety reasons, like cinema therapy, because you've got fond memories of that film. You kind of just instantly taken back to like a happier place. In my journalism work, I've wrote about cinema therapy quite a lot, and how no one really knows that we're prescribing it to ourselves until, for example, it could be a TV show or your favourite film. And the minute you put it on or rewatch it, you're like, okay, I feel okay now. Despite the fact that you know what's happening, that kind of, because of that reason, you feel calm all of a sudden. So yeah, I want nostalgia to keep playing a part of it. But also, like you said, I got asked to contribute to the BFI's Art of Action for Showroom. So the 2 films that I chose was Charlie's Angels, the 2000s, and Atomic Blonde, mainly for the perception of female action films, which obviously is a great idea, because a lot of action films tend to be like male-driven, especially, not really this more day and age now, feminisms and that got more, but audience are going to want female action films as well. So it's mixing that bit of nostalgia, but also the female aspect. So very excited about that, and just the opportunity to be able to program more, because being a young programmer and taking my journalism skills, I kind of developed a more love for it. So yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to hearing more about your Art of Action. Are you going to do some activity around that as well, or are you?
I hope to. I'm trying to figure out what yet, because it's the program's still very early days in communication-wise, so I need to figure that out. But I think so. I know they're doing it as a double bill, which is quite exciting.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Excellent stuff. Beth, I would like you to tell us a little bit about the research that you have got coming up and you're going to be undertaking, because I think that's really interesting and relevant to kind of how we're thinking about things today.
Sure. So we're kind of seeing it in a couple of stages, but stage 1 is just the fact that we have so much data already. We have this rich pool of quantitative and qualitative data that we're going to be working with some academic partners to really interrogate it and understand it, so that we can, I guess, have a sort of archive of quantitative data that we can shape into creating visuals and stories and articles, so we can share more of what we know, basically. We're also looking at a project with a hospital partner, a service evaluation project on our tailored screenings that I mentioned earlier. Just a piece to try and understand the impact in terms of patient engagement in their healthcare, and also general quality of life. But there is so much scope, to your point right at the start. There's a reason, my role has changed recently from being in operations to be able to focus more on the impact, because we really recognise that. And that's a really intentional and conscious choice for our charity as a whole, because we want to step out of just purely the operational side of things and into shaping the thinking around the role that cinema plays, that it's not just entertainment, but it's healing as well. So yeah, really exciting things to come, hopefully.
And some of those findings are going to be available. Are you going to publish them so we can read them as exhibitors?
Yeah.
Get you back on
100%.
to talk to people about those findings?
Yes.
I've got like a million questions, but I'm mindful that other people might want to have a go. Have we had any questions in, or does anyone want to put their hand up, and we've got mics nearby? Or are you all still recovering from the stories? Yeah, we got one. Well, you decide.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's really powerful and brilliant work that you're all doing. And I just really wanted to, I guess, add from my own experience, one of the most powerful things that I've been involved with at Watershed in Bristol was when we worked with the Good Grief Project. And we did a season, with people that had made a documentary and about losing their son, who was 27, I think. And then we put this season of films on, and I'm getting emotional about it now. And it was unbelievable the audience responds, you know, because we thought you're talking about grief and you're talking about loss and you're talking about this immediate emotional thing, you know. And what happened with the audience was, because, you know, who's going to turn up? And who turned up was a bunch of people who had immediate experience of grief. And because of the person that was in, you know, presenting the film, they were able to talk to them. But they were, the family who had just lost their daughter and were in tears at the back of the auditorium, was told to go to this event by their GP. Because, you know, when you're dealing with that kind of issue, you know, where's the prescription? And actually what they were prescribed, as it were, was to go to Watershed. Oh, they're doing this thing about grief, you know. And so that connection in the cinema at that point, and that discussion was just extraordinary. And I mean, since then we've done stuff with palliative care as well. And the film becomes the route through to opening up the discussion. But the important thing was to have a kind of responsible adult, as it were, fronting it. You know, it wasn't me. It was somebody that knew something about, you know. But the audience, you know, the need from the audience, as it were, to have that discussion and to be involved in it was extraordinary. Really, really powerful.
No, thanks for sharing that, Mark. Just really quickly on that, while you might still nearby, in terms of the GP prescribing it, I'm mindful we haven't talked about kind of the prescribing element because it does happen in a few cinemas. But how did the GP know about the event?
I don't know. You know, I mean, they just said, you know, what you know, just they were asked what was it that brought you here, you know, and
Great.
I don't know how that sort of happened, but yeah, there's a whole sort of set of, because you think about cinema as entertainment, right? I think we all think broadly about cinema as entertainment. But, you know, clearly, you know, there is, as you've been showing, you know, I mean, there's completely other ways in which people are using cinema, and I don't think we as cinema operators are alert as much about that, because you just think, oh, the audience has come, the audience has watched, the audience is gone, but you don't know who's in your audience, and you don't know why they're there, or really, you know what I mean? You have a sense of it, but yeah, so I think for me, you're really demonstrating and amplifying what the kind of social and other purposes, as it were, that we are involved in.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to talk about GP referral. I'm doing a bit of work with Sport England, which is health and wellbeing. So we get GP referrals from health and wellbeing, and then we're trying to get them to understand that referral to the cinema is a health and wellbeing aspect, and it's just an interesting concept. It's lovely to see the data, because we can use that data so much, because there is funding from Sport England and they are looking at health and wellbeing. I'm just wondering, have you had any dealings with Sport England? Have you, and also where MediCinema is, what location? Because we as cinema, I'm from the Lee Film Factory, so if there was a MediCinema, we could link in referrals from them to us as a buddy scheme, but we're a bit left on the outside. We can do so much to help, but it's just getting there to help. So if you can tell us where your locations are, well, probably on your website, I'm probably answering the question, but how have you come across GP referrals? Because we are getting them through, I'm part of a leisure centre as well, so we're getting GP referrals to the leisure centre, and then the leisure centre referring health and wellbeing to the cinema. So it's just whether, in your reports, whether you can fix that in somewhere.
Do you want to start by saying where your core sites are? That might be useful.
Yeah, so we have, start from the top, we've got Glasgow, Newcastle, Wales, sort of in Newport in Wales, and then 3 in London, so Chelsea and Westminster, St Thomas's and Guy's. And we are in the middle, this is a lovely break for me that I'm not dealing with builders. We're in the middle of building one at Alderhay Children's Hospital in Liverpool at the moment that should be opening next month. So that's where we are, but we really want to be building more.
And I think quickly, like on that note as well, you talked about 70%. Was it 70% that said they're likely to go to their public cinema? So there's something in that. I mean, how we can connect, unless you're already doing it. Are you connected with your public cinemas on the doorstep, or is that something we can start doing?
There are some often like the independent cinemas who are near us, like, but not as much as we should be, to be frank. I think there's so much things like with the Good Grief project that you mentioned. I think that chimes so much with what we are trying to do with our tailored screenings. It's about that peer-to-peer support of people going through the same thing. There are people, like the one that always gets me is the Advanced Prostate Cancer Support Group. Like, men don't talk about their health, and we know that, but they are in that group together and then in a room with other people going through the same thing, and it's just incredibly valuable. And those, we get referrals very much from the hospital. So what you said about having like an expert in the room, so when we are developing those tailored screenings, we work with someone from the particular department. So often it's like the clinical nurse specialist for whatever department it is, and we work with them and with the patients themselves and design each one to what they want. So some people want like a diabetes one, and it might be actually it's about educating them about how to manage their diabetes because they've recently been diagnosed with it, for example. Others, say some of the cancer support groups, they actually don't want to talk about anything. They just like being in the room with other people who understand what's happening, but some people don't actually want to talk about anything. And we just very much just co-design it with them and develop it with what they need, sort of thing. But you're right about having sort of it's good to have the sort of specialist there as well.
And some of that mirrors the kind of things you were saying about not, having an activity means that you're all together and you can just be in the same presence without having to actually talk, or, because sometimes it can be quite intimidating to talk about what you thought about a film, even though we're kind of experts in the room, sometimes, you don't want to share your opinion. So to having that activity or that space and to be together, so that's great.
It's like that, do you know the old analogy about the best place to have a awkward conversation or a difficult conversation is when you're driving, because you don't have to look at the other person and you're sitting next to each other? It's exactly the same in the cinema. Not that you can talk in a cinema, that's not allowed.
Well, you were saying one of your screenings got a bit rowdy or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging. Everyone was talking through that. I mean, I could hear some of the conversations and it was like fun conversation, but at the same time I was like, I want to watch the film.
You have to set some ground rules, I think. Do we have any more questions? No? Any questions on the... No, we're happy. Well, I think you guys are around for a little bit today. Yeah? And Tash is as well, so if anyone wants to have chats, then I'm sure that's okay to approach. But thank you so much for kind of coming up and being here for the first session this morning. Sorry if we made you cry. Should have warned you. And thank you to our amazing panellists. It's so good to hear from you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.